Hey everybody, we're doing another topic video today, and I just figured there were so many hot takes from last week, I would just continue and do more hot takes this week. So I am covering what you guys consider controversial opinions. Before we get into that, I will go ahead and plug my website. It is deepfocuslens.com. I am an artist and I do commission portraits and I sell prints of my work. If that is something you are interested in, you can go to the website, the shop. And if you have any questions about a commission or a print, you can always email me. My email is in the description box below. Okay, first one. Death Proof is Tarantino's best film. Oh, that is a hot take. I don't agree, but I think I can kind of add to your hot take. It's not my favorite Tarantino film. My favorite Tarantino films, no question, are in the 1990s. For me, it would be Pulp Fiction, probably Jackie Brown, maybe in second. I'd have to rewatch it to be sure. But I will say, I think that Death Proof is Tarantino's best film, for me at least, of the 2000s, the early 2000s. So that would be like, 2000 to like 2009. Yeah, I think this is his best film. And I think it's because it's most reminiscent of the films of the 1990s. I don't think he's as ambitious. He's not overreaching to the degree that he kind of ended up doing later on in his career. I think Tarantino is best when he takes really kind of cheap, trashy, kind of squalid type of references and elevates them. He's inspired by them. Like he can take, gangster movies and blaxploitation, all that, heist type stuff for Reservoir Dogs, Pulp Fiction, all that, and he creates something kind of, something that is very intelligent about it. And I think that Death Proof, it really knows what it is. It is meant to be, again, trashy, grindhouse, kind of bad type of movies that he relishes in, and yet he can kind of, make that kind of kitsch filmmaking, that pastiche filmmaking, elevated in a way that's very personal to him. And I think that's his great power as an artist. And yeah, I do think that Death Proof is very underrated. I personally really, really enjoy it. And the more that I watch it, even though I do consider it quite flawed, the more that I watch it, the more that I like it. And I find the more that I watch films like Kill Bill, the more times I watch films like Django Unchained and Inglourious Basterds, I don't connect to those as much. I do connect to maybe individual scenes, but not the full sum of its parts. My reason for that is a lot of things. I do think that, throughout his career, as he got more confident, as he got bigger, his movies got more weighted down by the references and the indulgence of it rather than making a point about something. I think he gets really ambitious when he's doing more kind of historical type of films. And often those films to me feel very tonally muddled, very overstuffed, and I just kind of appreciated more the restraint earlier in his career. And I do feel that way about a lot of auteurs who began in a certain way and became, more abstract and making more grandiose, ambitious statements in their work. The theatrical cut of Lord of the Rings are better than the extended. Ooh, I wish you had a explanation for that. That is a hot take, and I totally disagree. And I disagree maybe more strongly than I might normally because I just reviewed Lord of the Rings not long ago, and I actually reviewed the theatrical cuts rather than the extended because I figured that would be more accessible to the people. I tend to always, or in the past, I've always tended to watch the extended editions since they came out. Because they provide just so much more. These films are just so ambitious. They could barely be condensed into a 3-hour film for each of the 3 parts. And because of that, so much is missing in the theatrical cuts. And when I watched them this last time, I realized how many things don't pay off, how many things are inconsistent about the theatrical cuts, how even just little shots, little scenes here and there add so much depth and emotion and, create more of a risk, ultimately. There's just more process and payoff. There's stronger arcs. And it's just more satisfying, ultimately. I'm not saying the extended editions are perfect, because they're certainly not. There are a lot of scenes I actually don't like, but then there are other scenes I think are fantastic and add so much to the films. So much pathos. One of the most glaring is that you don't see the end of Saruman. You don't see his conclusion. You don't see his demise. And that to me was crazy. That you have this antagonist throughout the movie, and they don't even bother to show how he died. And just a complete oversight, just brushing past it because we got to keep moving. And it's like, whoa, come on. There's a bit, I guess, of satisfaction with the extended cuts in the sense that you do get to see that death. It's not good. I really hate the way that scene is handled. I think it really sucks. But at least there is a conclusion there. So yeah, it is a mixed thing, but overall, no question, I think the extended cuts are much more satisfying. Nicolas Cage is one of the greatest actors of all time. Uh, I would say that's a hot take because anytime I say I like Nicolas Cage, people look at me like, what? They can't believe it. Look, I think Nicolas Cage is very interesting, obviously. He's somebody that when he's on screen, you can't take your eyes off him, for better or worse for some. He's very eccentric, obviously. He's a crazy human being, very impulsive, but also very passionate. And I've heard him talk very passionately about film, and he really has a knowledge of the classics of film movements. And I think because of that, especially silent film era, I think that's why he's really able to find a style of acting that he really appreciates, likes, and it works for him. It may not work for today's audiences, and when I say that, I mean it may not be accessible to everyone, because today we're more interested in more naturalistic acting, more gritty acting, whereas he's doing more like artifice. He's doing more like Nosferatu, German expressionist type stuff, or like Boris Karloff, Bela Lugosi, Lon Chaney, like real over the top expressions and all of that. And, I think it's really fun. And I like kind of acting where there's a fine line between, is it pure farce or is it not? Is it kabuki? What is it? And you get that sense from roles like, James Cagney is one of them. I love him as an actor. Jack Nicholson in The Shining. It's really hard to kind of figure out what is that performance doing, and I think you get a lot of that from Nicolas Cage. I personally find it fascinating. It's just a different type of acting. Promising Young Woman is a bad film. It doesn't know if it wants to be tongue-in-cheek revenge flick with stereotypes as characters or a realistic and politically engaged film. It falls somewhere in the middle, and when it does get realistic, you start to wonder about all the previous artificialities/inconsistencies. Any serious theme the film is trying to explore just gets lost in the midst of all the bullshit. I can't disagree with you on that. I do like Promising Young Woman, though. I think it's very entertaining. I've seen it several times, and I just really enjoy it. But I cannot disagree with anything you're saying here, and I do think it's very flawed. And when I reviewed it, I really got into the things that are flawed about it, because I think this film could have been much better than it ended up. But yeah, what you're saying is, I do agree. I don't think it quite knows what kind of film it wants to be, because, part of it is that very tongue-in-cheek, very satirical sort of, revenge girl movie that has a lot of attitude, a lot of personality, and I enjoy the aesthetic. I think all of that is, part of the satire. But at the same time, once it starts to get more into the themes it's trying to tackle, which is, it's about the new wave feminist, I don't think it really succeeds. It just kind of touches on basic ideas of feminism, especially toxic femininity, without really sinking its teeth into it. And I think it was just kind of afraid to do so. But that's just part of our culture now. It's like we can touch on things without digging into them because we're afraid of offending people. But yes, I think there were so many things I wish it had tackled. I wish it had, talked more about that toxic femininity and what it means to kind of sell your body in order to get something as a manipulative tactic, especially in this modern world, and how we experience that, or how males experience that as well. A huge thing is the idea of rape and consent and evidence, and where is the line there, especially when something happens as a claim and there isn't any evidence. See, those are the sorts of things that I think really need to be talked about, the things that really need to be explored. And again, they're hinted at, they're touched on here without delving into them. And then you get to the end of the film, which is very chilling, but it's kind of a cop-out, it's kind of a way to kind of put a neat and tidy bow on everything without really allowing ourselves to really marinate in the darkness and the complexities of everything that we just experienced. So yeah, I think it's a very, very flawed film, but I do think there's a lot there that kept me interested, that kept me intrigued by this director. The most overrated director of the past 30 years is without a doubt Quentin Tarantino. He is an adolescent who considers himself an artist. His films are exercises of style over substance, and his characters sound the same, like they are Quentin Tarantino speaking. I do agree that he is overrated for sure. And I think a lot of the things you're saying here are pretty true, but I think they can also be seen as a strength as well. As you say, an adolescent who considers himself an artist. Yeah, for sure. He seems like a kid who never grew up and just revels in all these terrible movies and these, movie references. But I think it's because he's an adult that he's able to shape that into something kind of interesting. Um, yeah, his films are style over substance for sure. And I think they've grown more in that direction, unfortunately. But that is, part of the point. It is called pulp fiction. It's taking the kind of style over substance idea and then, making it inspired when it's done well. Yes, his characters do sound the same. And again, part of that is part of a very distinct kind of poetic style of his dialogue, a rhythm to it that really works specifically for him. But I do think as he's gotten older, his writing is not as good. I do think he's a good writer, but I don't think he's as great as everybody says he is. A lot of his dialogue at times does feel very screenwriter 101. It is very cluttered, drags on too long. I know tension is a huge thing with his films. Sometimes it works really, really well. Other times I think it doesn't quite work as well. I do like Tarantino. I really do. He really inspired me, but I've said this before. He's one of those directors I think more when you're first getting into film, like you're 16, 17 years old, or you just got into college and you're a film student. Yeah, Tarantino is perfect for that. You're going to fall in love with Pulp Fiction and Reservoir Dogs, all those different movies. But then you get older and you become more well-versed in film. And I've seen all kinds of different pastiche filmmakers who have a much more sophisticated way of exploring kind of kitsch filmmaking, pastiche filmmaking than Tarantino ever has, for sure. But that's very typical. There's always like a staple, like, a person who kind of represents a certain type of filmmaking for everybody else, may not necessarily be the most talented. But that being said, I do think Tarantino, of course, is very, very talented. I think he's a little bit too ego-driven. I know he's very proud of his talent, very proud of his scripts and everything, and he should be. For sure, he should be. I don't have a problem with people saying they're talented, but I think he's a little bit too wrapped up in that. And I think if he kind of removed those filters a little bit, removed the ego, I think he could really get at something again that really challenges him, because I don't think he really challenges himself in the way he used to. And part of that, I think, is security. I do think that ego like that is one of the more dangerous things for a creator, for an artist, especially an artist of this caliber. I know he has one film he'd like to do. I'd like to see him more kind of remove that veneer a little bit. And I think he started to more, or he has in the last couple films, especially Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. So we'll see. If you take away the novelty of entering dreams, then Inception is just a glorified episode of Mission Impossible. The stakes are mundane, and the depiction of dreams are very undreamlike. I've never once dreamt like the people in this film. The puzzle box aspect doesn't help at all. Satoshi Kon's Paprika 2006 is a much better dream movie. Oh, of course it is. But there are many dream films that are far greater than Inception. And I know I'm probably get killed for this, but I don't think Inception's that great. I never thought it was that great. And everyone would tell me, you just don't understand it. It's a masterpiece. And I'm like, I really don't think it is. I think it's typical of a lot of Nolan films. I think it's touching on higher concepts and ambitious ideas without really sinking the teeth into them. They still kind of remain very much in a literal space, very much relying on specific plot points and gimmicks in order for the whole concept to be fleshed out and fully realized. And I think that's kind of limiting, especially for a creator, and limiting for an audience. Typically in dream sequences, especially great dream sequences, particularly looking at David Lynch films as an example, there's a meditative quality to it. Yes, there is a very conceptual aspect to it, but he's able to blur those lines in a way that really free up the mind. And I just don't think that Christopher Nolan does that. Not dreamlike at all. I've never once felt a dreamlike quality from Nolan. I get more of a sense of, we're kind of rearranging building blocks like a blueprint, and we're really trying to explore the way filmmaking, the mechanics of filmmaking by subverting a lot of that, by taking apart maybe narrative in an interesting way. And that's fine. It's ambitious, and I like ambition like that. But I think at a certain point, you're still too bound by the idea of the mechanics, rather than, being elevated to something higher, some higher level of consciousness. And yeah, a glorified episode of Mission Impossible, we saw that with Tenet, especially. I think that film had a humor about it, even though I, struggled with it a lot. I did like the humor of it, and I did like that it was more shamelessly Nolan. He wasn't afraid to be like, I really like espionage thrillers and expensive movies with spies, secret agents. I like the idea of those things, but we're going to use them like chess pieces on a board in order to navigate a certain concept. I do think I need to see Inception again. I think that would be good for me. But I think there are a lot of films like that, Interstellar, where the gimmick just wears thin, and oftentimes there's a lot of plot holes there. This is great. La La Land is just the feel-good version of Mulholland Drive, but Mulholland is way better. You know, I was thinking that when I saw the film originally, but you know, there's a million movies about the girl who goes to Hollywood hoping to become a big star, you know, so there's no shortage of that. Um, but yeah, for sure, you know, kind of the romanticism of Hollywood, and we glamorize it in certain movies. Both movies do kind of try to deconstruct that to a degree. Of course, one plunges, you know, deep into the hell of it in one of the most compelling ways ever in Hollywood, and that would be Mulholland Drive. But you know, La La Land is there. It is what it is, and it is enjoyable. But yeah, it's nowhere near Mulholland Drive. I don't know if that's a hot take, but I just thought it was funny. But yeah, so those are just a few hot takes. I really enjoy doing those, so I'm gonna keep doing it. Maybe make it a consistent thing. But that is the video. Thank you guys so much for watching. Over here you will see my Patreon supporters. I'd like to welcome all the new members and thank you all so much for your support. If you are interested in becoming a patron, the link to support that is below, as well as my social media information. You can watch more videos here, and you can subscribe if you'd like. Catch you next time.